Discover the incredible transformation. She was sold to a millionaire doctor and uncovered hidden corruption in medicine. Clara Sullivan's life turned upside down the day her father died. At 23, she found herself juggling 2 jobs, waitressing at a bustling diner and answering phones at a chaotic clinic just to keep the lights on in their modest Chicago apartment. The dreams of becoming a doctor felt like fleeting wisps of smoke, lost amid stacking bills and the lingering fear of failure. Each day, she scrubbed away at greasy countertops, staring blankly at the bustling world she longed to rejoin, wondering if her aspirations had been reduced to a mere fantasy. One evening, as Clara wiped down the counter, she was startled by the presence of a man in a tailored suit. Dr. Mark Hudson, a renowned physician with a reputation that preceded him. His smile was charming, almost magnetic, and his eyes sparkled with potential. "I'm looking for someone with grit and heart," he said smoothly, eyes dancing over the diner's worn decor. "You have a passion for medicine, don't you?" Clara felt a rush of excitement. This was an opportunity, a life buoy amidst the swirling chaos. "Of course," she replied, almost too quickly, heart racing. His offer, an entry-level position in his private practice, dangled like a golden key that promised to unlock the door to a world she had almost given up on. The thought of escaping the suffocating grip of restaurant grease and late-night phone calls thrilled her. She was determined to seize it, but as Clara stepped into Hudson's lavish office the next week, the opulence almost suffocated her. Expensive art hung from every wall, and the scent of luxury cologne filled the air. It wasn't the sterile environment she had imagined. The stark reality hit her harder than any emotional blow. The chaotic hustle of the clinic was a far cry from the sterile professionalism she expected. It was chaotic not just in the sense of activities, but the moral compass that swayed in every direction. As days morphed into weeks, Clara's eagerness was overshadowed by an emotional unease that gnawed at her conscience. The longer she worked under Dr. Hudson, the more she witnessed the exploitation hidden behind the veneer of success. Patients rushed in and out, their needs were neglected under the weight of profit margins that dictated every decision. The more Clara watched, the more pressure built inside her. One humid afternoon, she overheard hushed voices in an adjacent office, a discussion about unethical clinical trials. Her stomach twisted. Could this be the very reality lurking behind Dr. Hudson's charmed facade? Clara's heart raced, caught between the allure of the medical world she craved and the horrifying shade of malpractice she couldn't ignore. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each day, the weight of her reality became heavier, pressing down on her resolve. With every piece of knowledge she gathered about Hudson's operations, her moral compass began to spin out of control. The chilling thought of losing everything, her job, her mother's stability, pulled at her heartstrings but ignited a fierce determination. Clara wanted to stand up, to bring justice to those who suffered in silence under Dr. Hudson's reign, but what could one voice accomplish? The battleground felt uneven. Just as she began reaching out to colleagues, desperate to rally support, whispers of other women like her surfaced, stories of bravery tainted by manipulation and silence. As Clara braced herself for a confrontation, the haunting question loomed: would revealing the truth mean sacrificing her own future, or would it ignite a fire against the exploitation she had witnessed? As the clock ticked down to her moment of confrontation, she could feel the burden of hope and fear collide, leaving her gasping for clarity amidst a storm of moral chaos. As the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting elongated shadows across her cluttered desk, Clara felt the weight of the decision pressing on her shoulders. Each tick of the clock echoed her growing anxiety and doubt. Was she truly ready to confront Dr. Hudson? The man who had inexplicably pulled her out of the churning depths of desperation? The allure of security was tantalizing, yet the overwhelming certainty of ethical decay repulsed her. Her mind raced through the revelations she had gathered over the weeks. Descriptions of patients whose cries for help had gone unheard, pushed aside for the sake of efficiency and profit. The chilling conversations she had overheard gnawed at her consciousness. Clara clenched her fists, her nails biting into her palms. She had to confront not only Hudson but her own fear of failure, fear that had once anchored her dreams to the ground. That evening, she united her resolve in a way she had never done before. She needed allies, but how could she trust anyone in this murky water? The internal battle waged inside her, a fierce struggle between silence and action. Clara pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over the screen until they trembled with uncertainty. After a heartbeat, she typed out a message to her closest coworker, Jenna, who had often shared her frustrations about the practice's direction. "Can we talk?" "It's about Hudson and the trials," Clara typed, anxiety pushing her fingers clumsily. She hit send, the action feeling like a small leap into the unknown. Within minutes, Jenna responded, a flurry of emojis somehow managing to relay both concern and excitement. "Of course. Meet me at the cafe after work?" As Clara switched off her phone, her heart raced. This was the beginning. She felt the burgeoning flames of determination ignite within her. But as quickly as the hope surged, a chill settled in. What if Jenna had no desire to engage in something that could jeopardize her career? Still, she couldn't back down. The truth had to be unearthed, no matter the cost. Days rolled on, and with each murmured conversation in the office, the distance between Clara and her justice narrowed. Jenna had expressed her concerns, echoing many of Clara's uneasiness about Hudson's ethics. Encouraged by this mutual understanding, they cautiously plotted an approach. It was imperative to gather documentation and present a thorough case. A part of Clara felt liberated in revealing vulnerabilities that had previously been buried beneath layers of self-preservation, yet, as the plans progressed, the inherent risks loomed larger than ever. Reports of how past whistleblowers were treated created twists in Clara's stomach. Fear became a constant companion, nibbling away at her resolve. Clara spent countless nights tossing and turning, endlessly weighing the choices before her. One night, the tension peaked. She flung herself out of bed, a lone figure against the coldness of her room. Reaching for her laptop, she began drafting a document, an anonymous tip outlining the potential misconduct. As the words flowed from her fingertips, Clara felt clarity cutting through the fog of uncertainty. But just then, her phone buzzed. A message from Hudson flashed across the screen. "Clara, we need to speak. Important matters regarding the practice." The dread seeped into her, tightening its vice around her chest. The stakes were escalating, and now she faced a precarious moment with the facade beginning to crack and the truth at her fingertips. A confrontation was imminent, pushing Clara to the brink of her convictions. The next day would be decisive. Would she step forward and pen the truth, or retreat back into the shadows, silenced by fear? Clara could feel every heartbeat echoing with the impending possibility that tomorrow she would finally assert her voice or lose herself entirely. Clara arrived at the office with a storm brewing in her chest, the chaos palpable as she navigated through faces that used to seem familiar, now blurred by the shadows of doubt. Each step felt heavier, laden with the weight of the unknown as she replayed Dr. Hudson's message in her mind. What could he want? The prospect of facing him sent dread coiling anew around her resolve. As morning morphed into a narrow afternoon, she and Jenna traded glances across the room. Their silent code suffered under the pressure. Clara could feel Jenna's pulse sync with her own. Though they had plotted together, the looming confrontation with Hudson was now a tangible threat. The walls felt like they were closing in, casting heavy, ominous shadows on their plans. It was a suffocating reminder that every decision they made could alter the course of their lives forever. "Are you ready?" Jenna whispered, her voice barely above the sound of typing keyboards. Clara inhaled deeply, gathering her thoughts like fragments of a jigsaw puzzle. I think I have to do this," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. It was a self-affirmation, a burgeoning strength, realizing it was her responsibility to act, not just for herself but for the silent voices that cried for justice in the corridors of their practice. As hours passed, Clara steeled herself for the precarious meeting with Hudson. The office door loomed ahead like a traditional guillotine, each step calculated, heavy with consequence. She recalled the patients' faces, those who had been denied compassion for the sake of profit, and it hardened her resolve even further. The moment finally arrived. "Clara, come in," Hudson's voice, smooth yet authoritative, cut through the room as he motioned her inside. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing her in a chamber where power dynamics pulsed under the surface. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to discuss the recent trial outcomes," Hudson began, his gaze penetrating, but she sensed an underlying tension, the truth hidden beneath layers of professional charm. Clara's heart raced. The stakes had decisively escalated. "Actually, Dr. Hudson, I have some concerns," she said, her voice trembling slightly but simmering with intention. His brow lifted slightly, interest mixed with annoyance. "Concerns?" She grasped the edge of the conference table, grounding herself against its cool surface. "I've heard unsettling things about how patients are treated in our trials. I think we need to review our practices ethically." Each word weighed heavily, a testament to her internal battle. The silence enveloped them like an impending storm, Hudson's expression morphing. "You're navigating dangerous waters, Clara. This organization has a reputation to maintain." His voice dripped with warning. Clara felt a seething surge of determination. Patients' well-being should come first, not the bottom line. Each syllable grew louder, bolder, until she could sense a change in the atmosphere. The power shift. "Be careful," he warned softly, an edge of menace creeping into his tone. "You won't like the consequences of digging too deep." The room seemed to shrink around her, the air charged with unspoken threats and implications. Clara's pulse hammered within her ears, the reality dawning on her: this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. She wouldn't back down. The weight of unvoiced injustices pressed against her conscience, but just as she felt she could gain ground, Hudson leaned forward, locking eyes with unnerving intensity. "You should reconsider your position," he stated, a firm threat cloaked in professionalism. The showdown left Clara on the precipice of fear and fortitude, feeling the gap between silence and action thriving with possibility. What would she really risk for the truth? The chilling realization dawned: to fight for justice meant exposing herself to dire repercussions. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, yet Clara knew she had crossed a line from which there was no turning back. As she left the office, a mixture of dread and exhilaration coursed through her. But the echo of Hudson's final words haunted her thoughts. Could she truly trust the allies she had gathered? What if the path she chose could lead her to more than just the truth? The battle for her convictions had started, and the decision lay heavy on her heart. Would she make the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good? The shifting tides of her journey had only just begun, and another confrontation loomed on the horizon. Would she be prepared to stand firm, or would she falter, victim to her own fears once again? Clara could almost taste the imminent chaos ahead. Clara leaned against the cold metal of her desk, her fingers trembling with the residual energy from her meeting with Hudson. The room was filled with the indistinct hum of conversations and ringing phones, yet all she could hear was the heavy thrum of her heart, the echo of Hudson's warning resonating within her. She had taken a stand, a pivotal moment, one she'd craved for so long, but now the full weight of what she had done settled heavily on her shoulders. Her reflection danced in the glass of her office window, and for the first time, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. Was this the person she had always wanted to be, the one to speak out and confront uncomfortable truths? Or had she just revealed the cracks in her own facade, exposing her vulnerabilities to a world that often thrived on silence? Jenna peeked around the corner, her anxious expression revealing a shared uncertainty. "You okay?" That looked intense. Clara mustered a small smile, but the warmth didn't reach her eyes. "Just trying to figure out what comes next." Already, she felt the complexities of her decision intertwining with her moral compass. 1,000 questions flooded her mind. Was engaging with Hudson the right move? Had she overstepped? It was a confrontation she had long desired but didn't brace for the backlash. She needed a plan, a way to arm herself against the backlash that surely awaited her. "Listen, I'm going to start gathering information, data, anything that could support what we talked about," Jenna offered, her voice a steady anchor amidst Clara's turbulent thoughts. A flicker of gratitude bolstered Clara's spirit. "Thank you. I think we're going to need all the evidence we can get." In that moment, her thoughts shifted. No longer was it just about facing Hudson, but about unearthing the layers of treatment within the trials that could expose the systemic issues buried beneath. Clara would become the investigator of her own convictions, the one who sought clarity amidst chaos. It wasn't merely a position of anger, it was one of purposeful ambition. What would others think? The question gripped her. Should she inform her colleagues? Sally's hesitations flashed through her mind, a web woven of fears and doubts. Still, a stubborn strand of resilience pulled her away from inaction. With Jenna at her side and her resolve solidifying into purpose, Clara made her way to the small research room, a hidden gem within their office space. Perhaps the key was within the data, a recounting of patients' experiences, their voices resonating louder than any corporate facade. She knew firsthand how powerful perception could be, how one narrative could tip the scales in favor of right over might. Flipping through case files, Clara began her exploration, seeking patterns, anomalies, anything that screamed injustice. Paragraphs came alive, the distilled essence of despair and disappointment. Each line told a story: a mother denied clinical access, a father's relentless pursuit of care that was forever just out of reach. The emotional toll of these cases propelled her forward. They were reminders that her fight was not just hers alone. Suddenly, a thought struck her: what if Hudson's grip extended beyond mere corporate interests? Her sharp intake of breath surged with realization. What if he was using the very trials meant to aid patients as leverage for his own gain? The pieces began shifting within her, paving the way for a larger scheme hidden in plain sight. With newfound urgency, Clara set herself a timeline. She decompiled the gathered data, framing it into a narrative that demanded attention. In the next few days, she would meet with colleagues not just to share her findings, but to ignite a call for ethical commitment that could disrupt the status quo. Yet, even as the momentum built inside her, a gnawing sensation urged caution. Could she truly lead such a movement and stay unscathed? The stakes heightened, and each decision carved paths of either allegiance or isolation. As evening slipped into darkness, Clara stared out at the city skyline, now filled with confident lights glittering like her burgeoning determination. She was ready to face the unknown, but aware that each step forward brought new risks. The question hung thick in the air: would truth transcend fear, or would she become another casualty of ambition? With anticipation churning within her, Clara turned back for another night of relentless preparation. A simmering message twisted in her gut: a day would come when she'd have to confront Hudson again. The stage was set, but who would emerge victorious? As she delved deeper into her research, she couldn't shake the feeling that collaboration wasn't just encouraged, it was essential. Who could she trust? Was Jenna enough? Or were there other allies hidden within the shadows, just waiting for someone to take the first daring step? The clock ticked, echoing the uncertainty of all those unanswered questions echoing in her mind. Clara knew this was her moment to define herself, and with it came the realization that the fight for justice was just beginning. But would she find the strength to lead when the time came? Clara awoke the next morning to a light filtering through her window, dappling her desk with a sense of promise. The silence of the early hour felt like a retreat from the chaos that lurked just beneath the surface of her daily life. She took a deep breath, allowing herself a moment to collect her thoughts before the storm began. Today was pivotal. It wasn't merely about gathering evidence but about preparing for the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. Dressed in a crisp blazer, she looked in the mirror and attempted to summon the confidence she needed. The woman staring back was a blend of determination and vulnerability, two sides of the same coin. She felt her resolve solidify with each passing minute, her thoughts narrowing toward one core truth: to challenge Hudson, she would need to forge a network. She couldn't battle this alone. After a quick breakfast, Clara headed to the office, mental notes of potential allies swirling in her mind like a growing storm. As she entered the building, she passed familiar faces, colleagues who'd often been friendly yet distant, absorbed in their own work. These relationships were more surface-level conversations. Today, she needed to delve deeper. A supportive environment could mean the difference between success and failure. The moment she set her belongings down, Clara sought out Sally. The apprehension she had felt earlier now morphed into something more akin to urgency. She approached Sally's desk where she found her reviewing reports. "Hey, do you have a moment to talk?" Sally glanced up, surprise lining her features. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Clara hesitated but forged on. "I'm starting to look into some discrepancies in our reports, specifically related to patient access in the trials. I think there's something bigger going on, and I could use your insight." The fear etched in Sally's brow was palpable. "Clara, you know it's risky to go against Hudson. I'm not sure we want to invite that kind of trouble." "Trust me, I've weighed the risks," Clara replied, her voice steady yet imploring. "But if there's a chance we can uncover the truth, don't we have a responsibility to do something about it?" That sparked a flicker of conviction in Sally's eyes, and she leaned forward, visibly invested. "Okay, let us talk. What do you need?" As Clara laid out her preliminary findings, she couldn't contain the thrill of possibly igniting a spark in someone else's heart. Their discussion opened up a pathway toward collaboration, filling the air between them with electricity. The rapid-fire exchange propelled Clara forward, invigorating her somewhat dormant analytical skills. The duo dissected each case, shifting perspectives and piecing together constraints that had confined patients unjustly. Each time they unearthed a potential connection, Clara felt her confidence swell. A sense of purpose took shape amid anxiety. With new resolve, she began formulating her approach to present their findings to the rest of the team. She visualized a meeting that would have not just facts, but an impassioned message woven through the data, a rallying cry that sought commitment and action. Yet within that vision emerged another layer of complexity. Who among them would join this battle willingly, and who would hold back, tethered by fear of reprisal? Clara felt contradictions tugging at her, her desire to empower versus the darker side of ambition that whispered of isolation. She knew that Hudson would not back down easily. He thrived on intimidation and manipulation. Would they all emerge from this, or would she be left standing alone? After their meeting with Sally had come to an end, Clara felt renewed vigor. Yet, as she prepared to reach out to others, a new question emerged: how could she ensure that each voice was valued equally, without becoming overwhelmed by the weight of responsibility? Those uncertainties loomed like looming shadows behind her, yet an undeniable fire ignited within. Clara resolved to give them all a chance to speak, even if it meant confronting hidden truths within the organization itself. But was she prepared for that level of vulnerability, knowing not only about her own potential exposure, but also the pain hidden behind others' stories? Clara's pulse quickened anew as she thought about the meeting she'd need to set up, recognizing that this was not merely a collection of data, it was a movement in the making, whether or not she fully understood its ramifications. As she gathered her belongings and prepared to leave for the day, Clara stepped into the corridor deep in thought. The weight of the moment pulsed in her chest, a duality of hope and fear merging into something tangible. She was moving forward, but with each step came the responsibility of bearing truth, one that could either lift them all or tear them apart. The question lingered as she took a breath, preparing to initiate the conversations that could change everything. Was she ready to stand at the forefront, ready to lead, or would she falter as the weight of expectation settled in? With that relentless drive propelling her, Clara pushed the door open, intent on gathering her allies, not knowing that the real confrontation was just beyond the horizon. The office buzzed with a familiar energy as Clara moved through the halls, her focus sharpening with each step. She felt like a warrior gearing up for battle, the stakes higher than ever. The conversations with Sally had lit a fire inside her, a potent blend of urgency and conviction propelling her forward. But the gnawing anxiety crept in, reminding her that vulnerability was the foundation of trust, a gamble she questioned as she prepared for the uncharted territory ahead. Clara knew she needed a plan, one that would instill confidence in her colleagues while establishing an atmosphere open to dissent. She recalled the professional development workshops she'd attended, sessions emphasizing empathy and active listening. Those lessons felt distant in the context of the looming confrontation, yet she realized they provided her the tools she needed. She decided to start with the crowd she felt certain could be her allies, team members and colleagues who had previously voiced discontent but hadn't acted on it. A quiet dissent thrived around Hudson, but it needed a catalyst to ignite change. Arranging a meeting would require meticulous planning. She hesitated for a moment, weighing the fragile balance of transparency with the risk of exposing the vulnerabilities others may not be ready to share. Clara's internal dialogue shifted. Perhaps by framing the discussion as a collaborative effort to improve their processes, she could create a safe space for dissent. With that clarity, she reached out to several colleagues via email, suggesting a meeting under the guise of a brainstorming session to address ongoing challenges with their trials. She phrased the message carefully, hoping to stir enough curiosity to garner participation without raising Hudson's suspicions too quickly. Yet, as she clicked send, doubt injected itself into her mind. What if they all chose silence over solidarity? The hours dragged on, each tick of the clock accentuating the uncertainty about the meeting. Clara paced her office, reviewing her notes and deliberating over potential outcomes. Would they rally behind her, or would they cling to the safety of the status quo, implying that their moment of action was still far off? No matter the answer, she understood this was a pivotal moment, the exact intersection of professional courage she had been waiting for. Just 20 minutes before the meeting was set to start, her inbox lit up with confirmations. Clara's heart raced. This was it. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her as she prepared herself mentally. Each name on that list sparked a faint glow of commitment. They were all taking a risk. Were they ready to challenge the status quo? As she stepped into the conference room, the weight of the impending conversation felt heavier than she anticipated. The attendees trickled in, glances exchanged that varied from curiosity to concern. She took a moment to gauge the mood, forcing herself to remain composed. Clara had rehearsed her introduction countless times, yet now all the words wanted to elude her. Once everyone settled, Clara cleared her throat, feeling the electricity in the air. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know many of you have questions about the processes surrounding our recent trials, and I believe together we can elevate our team's impact significantly. She launched into her findings, outlining their implications as clearly as she could, layering her analysis with statistics and tangible examples. Yet with each passing moment, the instinctual weight of uncertainty began to shift into something different. The sweet taste of empowerment resonated within the room as conversations began to emerge. The first question came from Mark, who had always been reserved. But what happens if Hudson finds out about this? The concern hung in the space, but instead of deterring, it ignited a firestorm of discussion among them. Stories began to flow, frustrations spilled out, and for the first time, a collective voice began to unify. Clara leaned in avidly, encouraging each of them to share their perspectives. She realized then that she was not merely guiding a meeting, she was orchestrating a movement. As insights and ideas clashed and fused into a discourse that had previously seemed impossible, Clara's confidence swelled. She was transforming right before her eyes, but as the energy within the room crescendoed, a looming heaviness accompanied it. A question still hovered just out of reach. Was she inadvertently leading them into a confrontation with Hudson that could jeopardize careers, relationships, and lives? Would this alliance solidify the team or cement her as an outsider in the very institution she aimed to reform? Clara's breath hitched as the implications of their discussions dawned on her. She was now steering a ship through treacherous waters, and the storm was only beginning to swell. Would she be able to navigate these tides and come out stronger, or would she capsize under the weight of the storm she had summoned? The thought pounded relentlessly in her mind as she concluded the session. Let us continue this conversation. It's only the beginning. Together, we can redefine everything. As the meeting wrapped, she caught the eye of Sally, who nodded, the unspoken concern reflected in her gaze. Could they indeed reshape their world, Or would their initiative crumble in the harsh reality of Hudson's domain? With tension crackling in the air and newfound resolve in her heart, Clara stood at that pivotal crossroads. When the moment of truth would arrive, who among them would stand shoulder to shoulder, and who would step back into shadow? The aftermath of the meeting left Clara grappling with a concoction of exhilaration and trepidation. The discussions held a potent energy, yet as she sat at her desk, her mind spiraled back to the omnipresence of Hudson. The man was both a mentor and a threat, often blurring the lines between guidance and tyranny. The way he wielded influence left many questioning whether they could trust him or even trust themselves in this evolving narrative. Could Clara truly unite the team against his looming shadow? Her thoughts splintered, envisioning various scenarios. Would Hudson confront her directly about this burst of camaraderie? Would he seek to reinforce his authority by punishing those who dared to question his directives? Every possibility she considered felt like a double-edged sword, causing another wave of anxiety. Clara knew that the unity she had inspired required her to maintain her courage, to nurture that kindling into a raging flame that would withstand Hudson's inevitable storm. In the days following the meeting, Clara remained vigilant but encouraged. Emails flowed in from team members expressing gratitude, some praising the newfound sense of empowerment they felt. Yet amidst that, whispers echoed in her head reminding her of the second-guessing that preceded the initiative. Would this solidarity last or dissipate like mist in the morning sun? Sally seemed especially eager, oftentimes stopping by Clara's office to share ideas they could present next. Together, they worked late into the evenings, developing strategies to support teammates who were too hesitant to speak out. The duo was digging deeper than just surface-level improvements. They began identifying systemic inefficiencies in their processes, ones that had long been swept under the rug. Each revelation felt like a stepping stone toward both personal development and organizational reform. One afternoon, while discussing changes in their approach to trials, Clara felt an urgent pulse of realization. She was growing not simply alongside her colleagues but also within herself. She was no longer that timid figure cowering behind spreadsheets and presentations. Clara was channeling her convictions into purposeful strategies. These were displayed not just in her discussions but in the confidence with which she presented her ideas, her tone imbued with newfound authority. Time progressed, but a persistent tension wrapped around her, cloaked and indiscernible. Clara became increasingly aware that Hudson had not addressed the discussion with her directly. Instead, he seemed to grow more observant, his penetrating gaze almost dissecting each movement she made. The days leading up to their next trial deadline felt as if she were playing in the major leagues, while the specter of his influence loomed large and intimidating on the bleachers. As the trial day approached, the dynamics shifted unexpectedly. Colleagues began questioning Clara's strategies openly, throwing doubt into the mix. Conversations once characterized by enthusiasm now contained an undertone of skepticism. Each critical inquiry tested her resolve. Mark expressed concern: what if our suggestions aren't even in line with Hudson's expectations? Is this really the right way? With the collective voice that had begun to unify, seeds of doubt were once again sprouting among them. Clara knew that the next step required delicate handling. They had to confront not just Hudson's authority, but their own fears. She felt the weight of leadership firmly on her shoulders. Clara decided to take a step back momentarily to gather her thoughts. An alternative to raw confrontation flickered within her, a strategy that employed the same empathy she'd learned in training. What if she approached Hudson with a proposal aimed at improvement, inviting collaboration rather than defiance? It was a risk, but what was she willing to lose? As that lamp of possibility ignited, Clara sensed an oncoming tide of determination, steadier and bolder than before. A new plan was forming, one that could steer her team through this labyrinth of fear. She glanced around her office. Her colleagues' faces reflected both uncertainty and hope, mirroring her struggle. Staring down the path before her, Clara took a deep breath. The moment had come to not just face Hudson but to redefine her own perception of authority. Would she come forth as a reluctant challenger or emerge as an empowered agent of change? In that charged silence, she decided it was time to act. She would request a meeting with Hudson, idealistic yet aware of the complexity that lay ahead. The moment of truth awaited her, where courage would either cement her position or unravel the fellowship she had fought so hard to cultivate. How would Hudson respond to her overtures, and which reality awaited her beyond that door? Clara's palms felt damp, her heart thumping in her chest as she approached Hudson's office. The corridor stretched infinitely, every step magnifying her uncertainty. The door loomed ahead, a solid barrier to her aspirations and fears. She had rehearsed her words 1,000 times, but now they twisted in her mind, sharpening into points of doubt. Would he recognize her courage or dismiss it as insolence? Finally, she knocked, the sound echoing like a declaration of war. A muffled invitation came from within. Clara turned the knob and entered, bracing herself for Hudson's formidable presence. He sat behind an imposing desk that reflected authority, the flickering light of the lamp casting deep shadows across his face. His eyes, usually calculating, softened momentarily as they acknowledged her. "Clara," he said, his voice smooth yet layered with an edge that hinted at his volatility. "What brings you here?" Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of the team behind her, their hesitations, hopes, and the unity they had begun to forge. "I wanted to discuss our strategies for the upcoming trial. I believe we can improve collaboration and streamline our processes if we." Hudson leaned back, interest sparking in his gaze but tempered by skepticism. "If we what? You think just by improving collaboration, we can ignore the rigor necessary to succeed?" The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown at her feet. Clara felt the pressure swell, she couldn't afford to waver. "No, but I think we can combine our strengths. Instead of operating in silos, we could align our efforts to ensure everyone is pulling in the same direction. It's about utilizing the team's skills to their utmost," and Hudson interrupted, lacing his fingers together, his expression a mask of contemplation. "And you believe the team will follow you? Without clear direction, people stray. They require discipline, not empathy." The words stabbed into her, they echoed the doubts she wrestled with daily. Could she truly shepherd her colleagues through this storm? But within those doubts lurked a spark of defiance. "I believe they will follow someone who understands their fears and champions their strengths. We have found common ground. It's time we leverage that." His brow arched, a smirk barely concealed beneath his professional veneer. "You're quite passionate. But passion rarely translates to results. What evidence do you have to support this radical shift? Have you considered that your idea may be naive, even reckless?" As she met his gaze, a newfound courage surged within her. Yes, the risk was high. But wasn't that the essence of leadership? The knowledge that she might stumble only to rise again would not deter her. "I understand that it's a risk. But all significant progress emerges from being willing to embrace discomfort. I ask simply for a chance to prove this new approach. If it doesn't work, I will accept responsibility. But if it does, we could revolutionize the way we operate." Hudson's eyes narrowed, contemplating her fury and zeal. "You really believe you can sway the entire team?" "I believe we must try, for ourselves and for the integrity of our work. We owe it to the people we work with to open a dialogue based on trust and empowerment." Silence hung heavily in the space between them. Clara's breath quickened, every muscle tensed, waiting for his inevitable response. Would he see her as an ally or an adversary? He leaned forward, considering her deeply. "I will allow you that opportunity, but know this, should it fail, all eyes will be on you. Your team will not be the only one watching." Clara held her breath, her resolve hardening. "I understand the stakes." Hudson nodded, an inscrutable expression crossing his face. "Then get to work. We'll see if your enthusiasm translates into change." As she exited his office, a whirlwind of exhilaration and anxiety swirled within her. This was her chance, yet the weight of expectations loomed like a storm cloud. With each step back to her team, she reflected on the monumental task ahead. They had sparked a dialogue, but could she truly galvanize their efforts? Reaffirming her vision meant fortifying her resolve against Hudson's shadow. As she entered the collaborative space, she sensed the tide would soon shift, for better or worse. "Let us begin a new chapter," she announced to her team, determination igniting in her voice. "Together, we can redefine how we work." But questions lingered at the edge of her consciousness. Would Hudson's tacit approval transform into a threat the moment he felt his control slip? Could her burgeoning leadership survive the trials ahead, or would it unravel beneath their weight? The decision point lay before her. How she navigated Hudson's ongoing influence would determine not only her success but her identity. Clara felt the pulse of tension. She was not just fighting for her place, but for the team's very future, caught between ambition and fear. As the unease settled over her, the doubt crept back, whispering, was it too late to redefine her own narrative? Clara took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room for familiar faces. The energy within the collaborative space buzzed with anticipation, yet her own pulse quickened with the weight of pushing against established norms. She could sense the gravity of her words taking root, but the specter of Hudson's challenge loomed large in her mind. It was one thing to visualize change, another entirely to implement it. "All right, team," she said, rallying herself and them, "we're about to embark on something new. Our objective is to develop our strategies collaboratively. I envision us breaking down our silos to foster greater innovation." A few nods surfaced, but questions flickered in the eyes of many. Clara's heart sank momentarily, doubt about her capabilities returned, but she shook it off. A leader's role was to transform uncertainty into conviction. "Clara, do you really think this approach will resonate?" Maria, one of the more seasoned members, asked. "We've always done things a certain way. What makes you think this will work?" Hudson himself. The mention of Hudson's name was a jolt. She recognized now that her struggle wasn't just against a culture but an entire mindset, a paradigm rooted in fear and tradition. "I know Hudson brings a level of rigor that's hard to dismiss," Clara interjected, determination threading her voice. "But rigor without adaptability is a recipe for stagnation. We have to evolve, even if it's uncomfortable." "Stagnation doesn't sound great," muttered Jake from the back, arms crossed defensively. "What about the risk if it all falls apart?" Clara took a moment, weighing the tension in the room. Each skeptical remark pushed her to reflect on her own confidence, but wasn't transformative leadership about enduring discomfort? "What we're doing today is laying ground for trust, and with it, innovation. If I falter, I will know, we will take responsibility together. Change requires bravery, and I believe we are more than capable of handling the risks." Skepticism lingered in the air, but some encouragement flickered among the more open-minded. Clara knew she couldn't force her vision upon them. It had to be cultivated like a garden with care, patience, and a willingness to adapt. She proposed a series of small workshops where they could brainstorm ideas for the upcoming trial, emphasizing participation over dictation. "Let us start with the first workshop tomorrow," she suggested, her voice gaining strength. "We'll focus on how to align our processes effectively, and I want every single one of you to contribute. Your insights are invaluable." As her words hung in the air, she watched as a gradual shift occurred. Jake uncrossed his arms, intrigued. Maria leaned forward, fired with curiosity about how teamwork could elevate their work. Every person was a puzzle piece, and Clara saw her role as the picture on the box that would guide them to fit together cohesively. That evening, as she returned home, doubt still gnawed. Had she thrown herself into a deeper conflict than she foresaw? Yet, the flicker of passion was now burning brighter. She began to imagine what success might look like, a team that thrived on openness, bolstered by trust instead of fear, but with the glimmer of hope came the tightening knot of anxiety regarding Hudson's silent observation from the sidelines. She needed allies. The fear of failure was not just hers, they all stood to face judgment. She understood that to truly embrace change, she must solidify her position as a harbinger of that change within a system resistant to it. In the quiet corners of her mind, the question rolled relentlessly, was there a point where adaptability became sabotage, tomorrow, with her teammates by her side, she'd face this head-on. But self-doubt lingered, as did the knowledge of Hudson's keen, watchful gaze. As sleep finally claimed her, she resolved that the true test lay ahead, in the fragile shift from individual roles to a powerful collaboration that could challenge the very foundation upon which Hudson built his authority. And so, as dawn approached, Clara felt a sense of foreboding intermingled with anticipation. The moment to stand united was drawing near, but what if unity only fueled Hudson's determination to reclaim control? Clara Sullivan stood in front of her colleagues, the weight of their expectations clinging to her like the humidity in the air. In that moment, she was no longer the waitress or the timid voice of dissent, she was a leader, embodying the resolve she had fought so hard to cultivate. The collaborative space buzzed with conversations ignited from a kernel of hope, yet a subtle tension still lingered. She confidently outlined the workshop's goals, emphasizing a collective approach to improve practices within their upcoming trial. We have an opportunity to define patient care from our team's strengths. Let us leverage the expertise collectively rather than waiting for directives. Together, we can create a system rooted in compassion and ethics. As the discussions unfolded, Clara witnessed an extraordinary transformation. Colleagues began sharing accomplishments and frustrations, fostering a dialogue previously stifled by fear. Sally chimed in with enthusiasm, "What if we integrate patient feedback into our trial protocols? That could provide real insights into their care." Affirmations resonated from every corner of the room, each contribution infused with a budding courage Clara hadn't anticipated. Days turned into weeks as they engaged in workshop after workshop, shaping a strategy built on unity and trust. Clara felt her confidence solidify. She wasn't merely pushing against Hudson's tactics, she was creating a new paradigm of collaboration, one that recognized the value of each voice. The lines of trust began to blur boundaries that once confined them to silence, yet, amidst the collective determination, Hudson's presence loomed, an ever-watchful specter. Clara could sense him observing, waiting to pounce on any sign of vulnerability. The impending confrontation was unavoidable. She was aware that he would not embrace any challenge to his authority lightly. One afternoon, in the vibrant light of the conference room, Clara stood before her team, ready to present the findings of their efforts. Her heart raced as she sensed anticipation rippling through the air. This meeting would be unprecedented, not merely to discuss data, but to assert their commitment to ethical patient care as a united front. "Today, we're not just presenting numbers, we're declaring our values," she began, looking around at the supportive faces surrounding her. As she presented their findings, Clara felt a profound connection forged. This was a united effort, a shift away from isolation to empowerment. "We have a responsibility to challenge the status quo for those who remain unheard," she concluded, her voice ringing with conviction. The room erupted into applause, and Clara grinned, pride filling her heart. Her confidence reached new heights. However, in the back of her mind, a nagging concern loomed. How would Hudson react to this powerful display of unity? Hours later, she found herself facing him in his office once more, where he reclined in his chair, an inscrutable expression on his face. "I hear you've gathered quite the following," he began coolly, satisfaction tinged with an edge of irritation. "What's this about redefining practices?" Clara swallowed hard, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. "Dr. Hudson, we believe that prioritizing patient care and safety should redefine our protocols. These recommendations stem from collective insights." His gaze sharpened, analyzing her words. "Understand that these changes come with risks. I hope you're prepared to face the consequences if things don't go as planned." "I'm ready to accept that, but all of us are committed to this path," Clara asserted, clarity and courage grounding her words. Time seemed to stand still as their eyes locked in a moment of sustained tension. With a slow nod, he leaned back. "Very well. Proceed, but I expect results. This will not be my ship sinking." As she exited, Clara's heart raced, but elation coursed through her veins. She had not only confronted Hudson but had reframed the dynamic between them. She was no longer just a rival but an equally invested stakeholder in their mission. Finally, As the trial began, Clara witnessed the tangible results of their collaborative efforts. Patients began expressing gratitude for the revisions made in their care processes. The once opaque walls around the practice began to dim as trust blossomed and ethical care stood at the forefront. Clara felt immense pride in the collective achievements of their team. Their commitment to patient advocacy had not only reshaped their strategies but reignited Clara's own aspirations. Months later, Clara stood in front of a room filled with colleagues, including Hudson, as they celebrated their successful trial outcomes. Each success was more than just a statistic, it was a validation of the transformation within her and their entire practice. Clara had risen from uncertainty, emerging into a realm of competence and recognition where her voice was honored. Looking back at the journey, Clara realized the challenges she faced were no longer burdens but stepping stones toward her growth. She had conquered her fears and doubts, asserting herself not just as a participant but as a leader dedicated to meaningful change. Now, solid confidence coursed through her. She was recognized not only for her contributions but as an essential force in fostering an ethical environment. Clara Sullivan had indeed transformed, and with that transformation came the acknowledgement she had once desperately sought. As she relished the profound joy of fulfillment, she understood that true leadership was exemplified in collective journeys rather than solitary victories. Clara was ready, prepared to forge ahead into future endeavors, empowered by her authentic self. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.